welcome to my YouTube channel, Living an Unlived Life. This is the 11th video in my Mindset Reset Challenge series, which came about when, in late 2024, I decided to radically change my life by making not one, but a whopping 52 New Year's resolutions. If this is the first time you've watched one of my videos, you can find the introduction to this series here. In this activity, I challenged myself to visually document some of the many sculptures in my hometown of Canberra. On a per capita basis, I'm sure that Australia's national capital has more sculptures than any other city in the country, possibly in the world. With a population of just less than 500,000 people, Canberra is small by global standards, but it is one of only a very few capital cities that has been planned in detail right from the very start, with a design that allows for large public places and grand vistas, all of which are eminently suitable for the placement of sculptures. This is a project I've wanted to complete for a long time, so I went on a 3-day hunt to record as many as possible. One sculpture I never found at all, another was almost completely smothered in vegetation, another was surrounded by a high impenetrable fence, another had been moved from the city out to the end of Tuggeranong, while another was so far away I couldn't see it, even with a drone. But all up, it was a lot of fun. However, while I found many of the sculptures to be attractive, or at the least interesting, because beauty is such a subjective quality, there were some sculptures that I definitely didn't like. At the end of this video, I'll reveal my top 7 favourite sculptures. Then I look at 3 sculptures that I think have been a complete waste of taxpayer money. And I finish my review by revealing a sculpture that I think is absolutely outstanding in every way, though few people seem to know of its existence. The government of the Australian Capital Territory, where Canberra resides, has invested in public art for many decades. Canberra's public art list is a catalogue of some 130 public pieces, of which most are sculptures that have been financially sponsored by the Territory government. You can find most of these sculptures and other public artworks on the website arts.act.gov.au, which offers an alphabetic list by title of most of the collection, accompanied by location maps. Unfortunately, this list is incomplete in that it doesn't include sculptures commissioned in the last few years that have not yet been catalogued. It also doesn't include sculptures that have been commissioned by other government and private agencies, of which there is possibly another 100 scattered around the city. Also note that some of the ACT government map locations are not completely accurate. You can also find some of the sculptures listed on the Monument Australia website, which records the public monuments and memorials in all Australian states and territories under various themes. The largest concentration of sculptures in Canberra is in the commercial centre of the city, where over 60 small and medium-sized pieces can be found. These include the statue Ethos, which was the first major artwork commissioned by the then National Capital Development Commission, the body that managed Canberra before it gained independence through self-government in 1988. Here's a selection of some of the other sculptures in the city. The design of Canberra is based on clusters of semi-self-sufficient suburbs, with each suburb having a small shopping area at its centre. Many of these shopping areas have public sculptures, especially those in the inner north and inner south of the city. And as Canberra is known as the bush capital, many of the sculptures are of native wildlife. Sheep feature in 3 sculptural vignettes in Canberra. The first little mob, created by sculptor Matthew Harding, took up grazing rights at the front of the Canberra shops in 2002. The second set, Ainsley's Sheep, by sculptor Les Cossats, is a whimsical nod to one of Canberra's early pastoralists, James Ainsley, who lived here in the region in 1825. The third mob comprises 2 blue sheep with a guard dog, which was created by Bev Hogg and can be found at the Dixon shops. Canberra also has some wonderful kinetic sculptures. This theme started with wind sculpture created by Ernst Fries in 1981. Most recently, Canberra has seen the addition of a mobile stack of yellow lollipops, which can be found in the Denman Prospect Water Garden in the Molonglo town area. Then there's Dinornis Maximus by New Zealand sculptor Phil Price, which is an 11-metre wind-activated pair of yellow blades set in the median strip of Yarra Glen. And, as if one wasn't enough for the ACT government, there's an almost identical sculpture by the same artist in a remote park opposite the Tuggeranong Arts Centre called Angel Wings. Then there's Breezing in Canberra, which resides in the National Arboretum and can be seen when driving along Tuggeranong Parkway. The most lively kinetic sculpture by New Zealand artist Jeff Thompson sits at the front of the Canberra airport, while the most lethargic kinetic piece resides at the front of the ACT Legislative Assembly, which I suppose is quite appropriate. While Canberra has over 100 individual sculptures scattered around the city, it also has a number of specific areas with concentrated sculpture collections. The first major sculpture precinct is the Australian National Gallery's Sculpture Garden, which lies between the gallery and the southern foreshore of Lake Burley-Griffin. Because these come under federal jurisdiction, they are not included in the territory database. The second sculpture precinct is the small area encompassed by the Parliamentary Triangle, which, as a result of Canberra being the national capital, comes under the separate planning jurisdiction of the Commonwealth Government, and development within this area is controlled by the National Capital Authority. However, there are 2 sculptures which are included on the ACT Government's register, as they were sponsored by Arts ACT. The third sculpture precinct is the land occupied by the Australian National University, which, as well as some modern pieces, has some sculptures that are over 50 years old. Neighbouring the university is a zone of the city named New Acton. As well as including Pepper's Gallery Hotel, this precinct contains a happy concentration of modern sculptures. There's also half a dozen or so sculptures in Commonwealth Park, which lies on the northern edge of the central basin of Lake Burley-Griffin. The final sculpture precinct worth exploring is the Australian Institute of Sport in the northern suburb of Bruce, where there is a collection of small and large sculptures of various types of athletes and sporting legends. Canberra also has a number of sculptural memorials. The first of these is the long avenue of memorials set out along Anzac Parade, which leads from Lake Burley-Griffin to the Australian War Memorial. Many of these memorials, which commemorate service units or specific theatres of war, have individual sculptures, such as this glorious memorial that commemorates Australia's participation in the Boer War. There are 3 other small but significant sculptural memorials in Canberra. 2 are in memory of the catastrophic bushfires that destroyed over 500 houses in Canberra's western suburbs in 2003. Firstly, the ACT Bushfire Memorial, which was sponsored by the government and is located in Stromlo Forest Park, and secondly, the Carved Story Tree, which was designed and sponsored by the Mount Taylor Estate community and is located at the northeast tip of the Tuggeranong suburb of Canberra. The third significant memorial is located in Western Park and commemorates the sinking of the Civ X boat, which sank on its way to Australia's territory of Christmas Island in 2001, with the loss of life of the 353 asylum-seeking refugees who were on board. There is also a private memorial to Indian spiritual leader Sri Chinmoy, which is located on the shores of Lake Burley-Griffin at Yarralumla Bay. And finally, there is a small and mostly unknown sculpture at the front of what was the Defence Services Association building in Forest, which commemorates the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels of Papua New Guinea who helped Australian servicemen, including my father, during the Second World War. Being a relatively prosperous city, there are a number of business sites which have commissioned their own sculptures. An outstanding example is the Canberra Airport, which is owned by the Capital Airport Group, a company founded by a long-term Canberra family and which has some 6 sculptures inside and outside the airport. The Capital Airport Group also owns the lease for the nearby Brindabella Business Park, which contains some substantial sculptures as well. And now to my top 7 favourite sculptures, which I've presented here in reverse order. Coming in at number 7 is Casuarina Pods by Matthew Harding. Located at the base of a small grove of casuarina trees in the heart of the city, this trio of pods are totally true to life and beautifully serve to remind passers-by of the trees above. At number 6 is a sculpture that I've seen for the first time in the last few days, created by Japanese artist Keizo Yoshio and located at Brindabella Business Park near the Canberra Airport. This beautiful piece called Flight incorporates a slab of granite which is in part natural and part polished. My 5th favourite is the massive sculpture Wide Brown Land, which sits on a hill on the northeastern side of Canberra's Arboretum. Constructed in Corten steel, this magnificent artwork celebrates Australian poet Dorothea Mackellar's popular poem, My Country, which was written in 1908. The sculptural forms that make up the work are inspired by the cursive style of Mackellar's own handwriting. Coming in at number 4 is a duo of traditional statues of former Prime Minister John Curtin and Treasurer Ben Chifley in about 1945. The work of sculptor Peter Corlett. I love this pair of men simply because almost every time I've driven by, I've thought that they were real and found myself doing a double take to remind myself that they are actually statues. Nestled among plants at the edge of a pond, I'd completely forgotten about this gorgeously serene little statue until I visited the grounds of the Australian National University as part of this project. Located in the Chancellery Courtyard, Saraswati was a gift of the Indonesian ambassador in 1966, and I'd first seen this life-size bronze sculpture in the late 1970s when my mother worked in the building next door to it. My second favourite sculpture is Fire and Water by Indigenous artist Judy Watson, who is from northwest Queensland. The construction is located in Reconciliation Place in the Parliamentary Triangle and incorporates a suite of Aboriginal symbology plus an audio accompaniment. I like it because the bower reminds me of a garden I once had where a bowerbird had constructed his own beautiful twiggy bower. Finally, my top-ranking sculpture in Canberra is Nest 3, which was constructed by Richard Moffat by welding together various found objects. Located at the top of Dairy Farmers Hill in the National Arboretum, the eagle's nest perches on a large granite boulder that was sourced from the Arboretum. Nest 3 was gifted to the ACT Public Art Collection by local water and power company Actu AGL in 2007. Before I go on to reveal my own personal top 3 worst sculptures, I'd like to give special mention to what I think are Canberra's 2 most boring sculptures. The first is at the front of the ANU School of Music, and the other is 50 metres away at the front of the ANU School of Art and Design. Both, I'm afraid, show little inspiration, innovation or excitement, which is a travesty given the highly creative institutions that they represent. Now for my 3 least favourite sculptures. In third place is DNA, designed by artist Jonathan Leahy from Corten Steel and Stainless Steel. This massive sculpture of 27 interconnected cubes lies in an area of remnant bush near the lake and, to my mind, completely spoils the beautiful national bushland around it. While all 27 cubes would unite to make a 3:3 ratio cube, the sculpture doesn't seem to have anything to do with DNA in any representational or abstract way. In second place is Moths Ascending to the Capitol by Alexander Knox, which was designed to evoke the image of a bogong moth bursting into flight. Not only is this sculpture monstrously ugly, in my opinion, but it bears absolutely no relation to a bogong moth. Unfortunately, it sits distractingly in the median strip along a very busy road, and I'm just very glad that I don't have to drive past it every day. In first place comes, in my opinion, and I'm sure that I'm not alone in this opinion, the most abominable sculpture ever created. Called rhizome and constructed from steel girders, this mess of a sculpture, which sits on the embankment of a busy highway interchange, looks very much like a pile of dumped scrap metal. Installed in 2006 at a cost of $300,000, the construction is meant to represent underground roots that grow just under the surface of the soil. But I don't see it. All I see when I drive past is the tops of a jumble of twisted grey steel beams. Finally, I'd like to draw attention to what I think is one of the most exciting, clever and beautiful sculptures in the city, possibly in the country, maybe in the world. Dedicated in December 2020 and created by Western Australian artist April Pine, this man in rusted steel is Andrew Inglis Clark, who lived from 1848 to 1907. As well as being an engineer, poet, lawyer, judge and legal scholar, Clark was the principal architect of the Australian Constitution. He popularised the Hare-Clark voting system, which he introduced to Tasmania and which was subsequently adopted in the Australian Capital Territory when it achieved self-government status. This exercise cost nothing in direct costs other than some $50 spent in petrol driving around Canberra to film the many sculptures presented in this video. Join me for my next episode where I shift from big to little gardens and make a charming set of therapy terrariums. For more information about living your own unlived life, if you go to my website, you can download a copy of my free book, Living Your Unlived Life, Finding Contentment by Honouring Your Dreams. And if it's your thing, you could like this video and subscribe to my channel.